This conference will now be recorded.
On Tuesday, the final satellite in the GOES-R series launched, and it will be making its way to orbit for the next 30 days. Let's watch that moment again as GOES-U
and here we go.
lifts off from here in Florida.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
GOES-U.
Liftoff of GOES-U, NOAA's newest weather satellite to monitor the Earth and Sun in high definition.
Engines look nominal. Things looking good as you see the Falcon Heavy soaring towards the heavens. All 27 engines powerfully lifting GOES-U on its trajectory and ascent into space.
A beautiful shot as we track the rocket from the ground here. The rocket is now powering down for max Q. Max Q is the moment of maximum dynamic pressure on the rocket. Max Q expected at 1 minute 7 seconds. The vehicle is now supersonic.
Falcon Heavy is supersonic.
Traveling faster than the speed of sound.
Max Q.
There we heard the call for max Q, maximum dynamic pressure on the Falcon Heavy. Vehicle still performs very well. All data looks nominal.
A great shot from on board the rocket, looking down on the Earth that it is leaving. And all 27 Merlin engines providing 5.1 million pounds of thrust. Coming up at T plus 2 minutes and 28 seconds, the side boosters are going to shut off while the center core will continue on. Wow, what a shot there of, again, all 27 Merlin engines firing off. 5.1 million pounds of thrust.
The side booster cutoff will be referred to as BECO. We'll hear that call out. And then when the center core shuts off later in flight, we'll hear that called as main engine cutoff, or MECO. Side boosters are all boosters are performing nominally. Everything's looking good with the 27 Merlin engines.
All right, what a moment now.
Side booster separation confirmed.
And,
There we see BECO and side booster.
To monitor the progress of GOES-U as it heads toward geostationary orbit, the test slot of 89.5 degrees west. Today is the Satellite Book Club Seminar Series, session number 196. The title of the presentation is the April 29th, 2022 EF3 Tornado Lessons from a Near Miss. I'm Jordan Girth with the National Weather Service Office of Observations. I'll be pleased in a moment to introduce our presenter for today, which is Kelly Butler, meteorologist from the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Wichita, Kansas. Sitting beside me, I have Matthew Wolfram, the Science and Operations Officer here at the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Melbourne, Florida. Really appreciative of the hospitality and all of the things that the Melbourne office has been doing this week with the busy GOES-U launch and all of the VIPs coming down. Just a few reminders before we get started. As you heard before the GOES-U launch, this session is being recorded. Please mute your microphone and turn off your webcam at this time. There will be an opportunity for Q&A after the presentation. We encourage attendees to post their questions in the chat, and we'll field them in the order they are asked. Please sign in with your full name or note your name when asking a question so we can follow up if necessary. We're always looking for future presenters. Please contact the TowerS team or fill out the form in the chat if you're interested in presenting in the Satellite Book Club Seminar Series. We're heading towards 200 seminars. What an accomplishment. The training team can help create training materials that may be unavailable. Ross Van Til can help with that. I'd like to thank the Office of the Chief Learning Officer, the GOES-R JPSS program, our presenter, facilitator, and all of you for being with us today. Without further ado, let's dive right in. Kelly Butler is a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Wichita. She's a native of Massachusetts and has enjoyed adapting to the wild weather of the Central Plains over the past 6 years. Kelly's weather interests are severe storms and other high impact weather. Kelly, welcome to the Satellite Book Club today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. All right, well, let's just get started. So on the evening of April 29th, 2022, a destructive EF3 tornado tore nearly a 13-mile path through portions of Sedgwick and Butler counties in south central Kansas. And this was a near miss for the 625,000 population of the Wichita Metro. Next. So just, this being a SBC, we added a couple of extra satellite slides in here, and just some of the things that we can take from this. So I know operationally in our office, several of us are always looping our satellite products in our AWIP stations, as well as using the College of DuPage on our situational display. And one of the ones we like the most here is the day cloud phase RGB, and this is several hours before our storm got going. But what you can see from this is, we've got storms that are going across western Kansas. You can kind of see, I don't know if you can see my cursor, probably not, but north-south, basically in the center of that photo, you can see there's a little bit of a Q field, a cloud field, and that's our dry line. And just to the right of that, you can see some, clear destabilizing areas. And then further to the east, you can see more stable areas and wave clouds and things like that. And so we can use satellite at this time to actually start proactively messaging, especially on a day like today of April 29th. We were not expecting necessarily storms in south central Kansas, but if we did get a storm, we knew it would go big. So it's what we call that, that conditional chance. Next. So some other satellite clues that we can get, these aren't necessarily the ones I would use in particular, but we had a hard time getting some of the archive data that we had. With some of the things that we use, we can use these to triage, different storms by, relatively cold cloud tops. As you can see in the right-hand picture there, that's a loop about ending 1 hour before our main storm got going. But also what you can see here is several other things. So we've got the cold front that you can see coming down across western Kansas. And you can also see the edge of the dry line, which is kind of that darker north-south line on the right-hand side. And that dry line is actually retreating ever so slightly to the west, actually, at this time. What you can also see is warmer cloud tops in the north-central to western Kansas, and those are decaying storms, which actually ended up having severe wind gusts with that, and we actually needed to issue a dust storm warning that evening up there in central Kansas. So it was a pretty busy day, which you might be able to tell. Okay, so if we're going to skip ahead by 1 hour, next. So this is at 8 p.m. This is what the storm looked like, out the window. And you can see we've got a really mature looking supercell. However, next, this storm was not quite handled very well on radar. It wasn't really what you're expecting to see when you have a really distinct mature supercell. So what we did have was a low reflectivity hook echo case. So some of the things next you might be able to focus on is this red circled area. You got really strong inflow right there. Next, did you see the hook echo? It's in there. It's in that circled white area. And this was made it pretty challenging because if you're not looking for a hook echo right there, you might miss it. And it's relatively on the rare side again to have these low reflectivity hook echo cases, and they do present quite the challenge for getting really good lead time because you might miss it. It's as simple as that. I mean, you'd have to go up pretty far in the column to get anything that looks remotely like a hook echo. So really, spotters were vital on this day, and I will talk about that more in just a few minutes. Next. So we're skipping ahead about 10 minutes. So this is our storm. Again, you can see next this highlighted area. That's where our hook echo is. Next, it's also where our tornado is. So this is the time of tornado touchdown. It's a little bit hard to see in that picture, but there is a little debris field there just above those and to the side of those trees. So would you have a tornado warning on that right there? Good question. Next, skipping to about 8:16. This is 6 minutes after initiation. You can see we've got a little debris ball there in that otherwise low reflectivity hook echo again. And over to the left, we have storm relative motion. You can see a nice couplet going there. Now, as this tornado, those two pictures on the right, went over those grove of trees into that subdivision there, you can see it took a lot of different structures. You can see a little corkscrew action on the top picture with really no saturation of the condensation funnel above that. And we've got a whole different picture there just seconds later. Next. So by 8:18 p.m., that is when the tornado made direct contact with the Andover, Kansas YMCA. I'm not even kidding, it marched right up to the front door. Now, 30 people did safely take shelter inside. And that really, and they were all safe. There were a couple injuries, but they were actually after the fact of kind of walking through the debris and things like that. And it wasn't by mistake. They really foster a culture around safety at the YMCA, and they were able to enact their plan, and all went well. Now, there are some what ifs, which we'll talk about, but there's one that really interests me, the fact that this tornado marched up to the front door and not the back door. There were people that were leaving the YMCA and saw the tornado and decided to turn around and take shelter in it. So you have to ask what would happen if, the tornado was behind them instead and they didn't see that, or the parking lot was on the other side of the building. What kind of injuries could have happened there. Next. So we at the National Weather Service know we're doing our part, right? We're putting out our weather briefings days in advance, but that's not enough, right? We need our partners, so our emergency managers and officials, to be also spreading the word. And that happened in this case. The Butler County Emergency Manager forwarded on, the bits of our packets that were for them and forwarded on to their local entities like the YMCA. And again, because that YMCA practices that culture of safety, the first day that they got that packet, they started practicing their safety plan, which is pretty remarkable in Kansas. Like, how many times do you get, hey, we could have a tornado today? Again, a conditional chance. We might not even get a thunderstorm. This place started taking action. And they also practiced their safety plan the day of the event in the morning, just to make sure they're all good. And ultimately, that proved to save lives. And so it's kind of just a nice little check of, we all still need to work together. Not any one person can do this themselves and spread all this information. So it's kind of just a kudos to everybody involved in that. Next. So I mentioned earlier how important spotters really were this day. Again, those low reflectivity hook echo cases, they're really, really tough. You have to be looking for that. And we were getting reports of funnels, and that, with starting to look at this storm really ramp up, made us really pull the trigger. But it was also a hard day to be a spotter. So with the high cloud base that day, there was inconsistent saturation through the funnel. So when you're a spotter and you're looking, however far you're looking, your horizon really dictated what you saw, whether you were seeing a funnel, whether you were seeing a tornado or not. So there were actually times where the emergency management and dispatch were getting phone calls at the same exact time with people reporting a funnel cloud, that a tornado has lifted, and that there's an ongoing tornado. And also with the high base, it was kind of hard for people to judge just exactly how far the tornado was from them. So they were all in slightly different positions. So there was a lot of situational confusion on whether they were dealing with, on their end, whether they're dealing with multiple tornadoes, just one tornado, or no tornadoes. So that was something that was pretty challenging. Next. So on the National Weather Service side, as expected, you might think that you're staffed well, but when something's really impacting the metro or close to the metro, some of the tools and tasks that you're doing that you can normally multitask really needed undivided attention. And that's something that we took away from this. And, because of that, we had a couple of shortfalls on our end on NWS chat. And it's something that we're going to work on moving forward. Next. And so one of the ways that we're going to work on that is through the Warn On Forecast, or the WAFs. So this was probably the first event for a few of us in our office of really trying to utilize WAFs in a real-time-ish capacity. And so what I have here on the left in the WAFs pictures here is a 30-minute updraft helicity, and this was from the first output of WAFs for the day. And on the right, it's a couple hours later, just one of the members, not totally cherry-picked, by the way. There were several members right up there. And so both of these outputs from WAFs were for 4:30 p.m. So this might be something, again, on a conditional day, are we going to get a storm? Maybe, maybe not. If we're starting to see some of these machine learning models really peg the metro, maybe that's something that we can use down the line in the future. And hey, you know what? Maybe we want to staff up a person or two to help with this potential. Now, the tornado didn't occur for another 4 hours, so it was kind of off. So if you did bring 2 extra people in at 4 o'clock and you still had no storms at all, would you hang on to them for 4 hours? That's some decisions that you kind of have to make. And just for kicks, if you can see this microscopic black line in both of those images for the WAFs, that is the actual line of the tornado damage path. So again, the WAFs did a really phenomenal job. Next. So from an emergency management perspective, I interviewed both the emergency managers that had to deal with this, and they both had a lot to say. And you can click next a few more times here. I've got several things there. One more. There we go. Just so it's all up there. So some of the things that the emergency management learned, we all push a lot of resources on social media, right? Facebook and Twitter is a great way to spread information. But that might not be the case when you're trying to get information to people that have been impacted by a tornado. A lot of the people that needed it, they weren't getting that information. They're outside, they're doing cleanup, their phone died yesterday and they don't have a way to charge it. So they really talked about how can we get the information actually tangibly in the hands of people that need it. And one of those things they actually thought about doing, which they haven't completed this yet, but was to make a packet of information that's going to include how to sort their debris, local contacts, insurance information, and have stuff in multiple languages that they might be able to put together to give to people like us at the Weather Service that are doing a damage survey, or law enforcement, or anybody else who's going to be going out there, the Red Cross, and have actual contact with some of these tornado victims. They also found there was a general lack of understanding around financial information and being prepared for that when it comes to severe weather. They did actually already run a successful public information campaign around renter's insurance and comprehensive vehicle insurance, which was something a lot of their younger people did not have and lost, their valuables. And we also have to think about how COVID has changed the housing market, or how it's been a little crazy the last few years. A lot of homeowners had the values of their home went up significantly, and the cost of rebuilding that home went up significantly. And when's the last time you checked your house out and actually checked how much money you have to rebuild? You might need to raise that up. So some people were not able to actually get the amount of funds that they would need because they didn't have that kind of reassessment with their insurance. So they've added all that information to their severe weather preparedness packets now. And I actually re-interviewed these folks earlier this year, and myself included, we're all learning just how long this recovery process can take from a single tornado event. So it's been almost 2 years, and they still have people in temporary housing. They're still dealing with insurance issues and have a pot of money that they're still trying to divide amongst people that need it. So, we think about this is one event. Never mind had there been multiple that day in this county, or over the next couple of years. So just managing all that as an emergency manager, it can be a lot. Next. And so something I really pulled out of here too is, we've all been affected by this COVID era training, right? And changing everything to virtual, and being able to click through slides real quick on PowerPoint and checking off that we did some training. But they found that it's really important that we don't do that. Not for everything, right? There's a time and a place. But for something such as disaster management, doing these live action, whether it's a tabletop or some sort of event where you're with people and actively managing something, it actually made a big difference for one of our emergency managers who is relatively new. And she just said, her quote is here, it's too easy to do this, and we really need them done live and in person. So I think that's something we can all kind of take out of that as well. Next. And next. So if we change event details just a little bit, we'd have to ask ourselves, are we still talking about a success story, right? So let's talk about the YMCA parking lot. So this tornado, again, it hit the YMCA 8/18, late on a Friday night. Not everybody's working out, right? But, what if the WASP was right? What if this was 4:30 p.m.? What if it was 6 p.m.? So we have after school, we have after work, people going to exercise. And as the emergency manager said, that parking lot is chock full, usually. So if we're talking about an extra 300 cars going into that building, are we still talking about all those people being safe? Next. There was an apartment complex that was spared. It was less than a block, to the west. 208 units. There's not a tornado shelter there. Again, that little shift, are we still talking about a success story? Next. And we have to talk about the visibility. So this was a highly visible tornado. Again, high cloud base. You could see it from really far away. It was beautiful. Everyone and their brother got a nice golden photo of it. But sometimes this was at the expense of taking shelter. From people that we talked to on the damage survey, they didn't take shelter when they got the warning. They didn't take shelter when the WIA went off. They took shelter when they were staring at it and realized it was more than just a funnel, right? Because this one person was at their house and looking over the other house in front of them. And again, because that condensation funnel wasn't fully saturated, they just thought it was a nice little funnel and nothing wrong. Didn't realize it was causing damage on the other side of the street. So as to quote one of the EMs, its visibility is all that saved some of the lives there. And, we have to think about how that might impact those people in the next tornado? Are they going to wait and look for it again? What if this was a rain wrap scenario? Are we still talking about a success story? Next. And finally, just the location of this. So, we really got lucky in that this tornado just grazed that city of Andover and otherwise wasn't in a very, very populous place. But, if we go just 5 to 10 miles to the west, we're talking about a 50,000 people, on that line number 3. With the things that we just talked about and people waiting and looking at this tornado, and not really realizing it was a tornado and it was just a funnel, are we still talking about a success story? And that's some of our challenges that we have to think about and how we communicate our message and what kind of behaviors were just learned that worked out, and things like that. So it's just kind of food for thought on that one. Next. So, we want the success story, and we want it to be because people are prepared, they took action, and we got a little bit of luck, right? So, and it kind of happened like that, right? So everybody worked together. We had preparedness messages, like places like the YMCA, they took action, they were prepared. We got a little bit of luck again on that path, and that all worked great. But some of the things that we can pull from this is what can we do different internally and externally to help with that communication and make sure people are prepared. What kind of different trainings and things can we pull from this? And especially on the public behavior, which is really a bigger weather enterprise issue, and what can we do with the tendencies of, wanting to get that golden photo at the expense of shelter, and what kind of behaviors are we really instilling in people? So those are just some of the things that we learned that day, and that's all I have. You can go next, a next, and a next, as a nice summary slide there. And that's all I have, so thank you.
Right, thanks Kelly for that informative presentation. We're going to head into our Q&A discussion section here shortly. We're encouraging everyone to stay on the line here and get ready to ask some questions to Kelly about her presentation. We also ask for your feedback on this session or any of the SBC series sessions. There's a short survey link that we just put in the chat for everyone. So any feedback on the SBC, please visit that form there and give us some informative survey information. I will mention in 2 weeks from today, on Thursday, July 11th, we'll have Eric running from Texas Tech and Joseph Patton from CSIS and Kevin Thiel from CIRO will be discussing the GLM background imagery and data quality on the next SBC webinar on July 11th. And then also, please contact the TELRS team, Kashad Brown and Emily Maddox here for questions about the SBC or any configuration on those satellite products that you have out there. So we'll start into the discussion Q&A section now. Again, if you have a question for Kelly, you can add that to the chat window, or if you'd verbally like to ask a question, also please put that in the chat there. So we're going to start going through some of these questions. First question, Scott Lindstrom is asking, great talk, the clear air around the 20Z time frame later makes me think that goes level 2 products like the TPW and the KPLI might have been very useful. And he's asking, are these routinely used in the situational awareness displays there at Wichita?
I'm not sure about the for GOES, for a CAPE product. I don't think that's something that we routinely use, but that'd be something we can totally look into. TPW, that's total precipitable water, I think, product. We do have some of that. I would say it's not usually on our situational display, up and about, but I know there are a few of us in the office that do have it as part of our procedures.
Okay, very good. Another question from Bill. So probably not going to get the last name right here. So Joe, do you think about using the new cap soundings and AWIPS also to track changing stability?
I don't think we use that very often. I think we kind of know it exists. I know I wasn't in office at the time that this storm was getting going. I don't believe it was used based on just our evaluations from the day. But it is something that I can bring up and see if we can make that more part of our daily operation.
Might bring Jordan in here. Do you have any information on like availability of new caps data, AWIPS, and how forecasters are using that?
Certainly it is in AWIPS. It depends on the circumstances of way it may be applicable. The time of the storm is going to have a role in that. Those passes that come from the JPSS satellites, they're going to come down, they're going to come in the afternoon. As you get later into the evening, you might not have as recent of information. So it's a good thing to bring up and a good reminder for all forecasters that if you're looking for that sounding and you might not have a radio sound that's been launched recently, there's two things you can look at. One, aircraft data, if something's nearby, if you're near a major airport. Two, this new CAPS data is out there too to give you a little bit of check on what's going on with the instability and perhaps even the cloud-based height as well.
Okay. All right, another question from Dan Riley. He's asking about wanting to know about the approximate beam height for this case. And he mentioned we've seen cases like this here, with the detached debris ball signatures.
I don't think so. It was really a beam height issue. It was really close to the radar, so we're only talking about 15 to I think less than 20 miles officially. But yeah, you had to go up pretty far to be able to see any sort of connection there with the hook echo, and it kind of continued like that throughout the whole case. And we've seen another case like this years back, similarly, that was a little bit even further away from the radar. But in this case, it was really close. So I guess you'd expect to not have to go up too high to be able to see that. And it did follow. If you had a loop of it, which I can add to the slide if anybody wanted to see that. The meso eventually got replaced. It was a cyclic supercell, and so that debris ball and the tornado just pretty much went straight north, eventually through that hook echo area as the new meso formed, and it did produce another tornado later in the evening.
All right, thank you. So we've got a comment here from Justin Patton mentioning that if anyone needs access to archived satellite imagery from the ABI, RGB, and GLM imagery, you can always reach out to him. Another comment, a great talk from Travis. Great talk, thank you. Just curious about the meteorological setup for the event. Kind of wondering why was the tornado threat conditional? And then I also kind of have a follow-on question about the SBC outlooks for that day.
Yeah, so we had an enhanced SBC outlook that day. We had a 10% tornado chance. I think there wasn't a lot of support whether we were going to be able to get through the cap that day, and specifically in that south central Kansas area. The setup was really, we had a cold front that was coming down out of western Kansas, and we had a dry line pretty much going north-south across Kansas. And there was a moderate risk up in northeast Kansas, kind of where you were going to have the interaction of that cold front dry line. And we did have other tornadoes kind of zipping down that cold front dry line interaction leading up to that earlier in the day. But the storms were really conditional. So, I think we didn't even have it enhanced until the morning of for that day. Just whether a storm, we'd get a storm at all down there was what was pretty tough. It really took the low level jet kind of kicking in like late. We had a lot of failing towers over and over again throughout the afternoon. Yeah, it was really the only storm in play down there at all.
Right. I guess another question here. Did you have, Sarah Corpidias is asking, did you have access to the terminal Doppler radar as well then?
Yes. I do not believe it was used in real time. But I think, I believe someone from my office did look at it after the fact and saw a similar effect. But it did resolve a little bit more of that hook echo region than what you could see from the ADAT.
Very good. Do you have any questions, Jordan, for Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting about this was, the discussion that you had with the EMs and the financial information. Is that county, is that a storm ready county? They're already aligned. So, but the the YMCA, did they have a weather radio there? Were they tuned into this? Do you know that?
I can't remember if they had a weather radio specifically there or not, but I know the YMCA was not a the weather ready. They weren't part of that program or anything. But the county itself was probably our most weather ready county in every way, shape, or form. Which that probably also helps in their messaging, and they're very proactive about putting out the messages and in all different ways that they can, and kind of making funny cartoons about some of our products and putting it out there to try to draw that attention to what we're sending out.
Sounds good. All right. I guess kind of a final question I have for you, Kelly, is also, you talked about the reflectivity signature. That hook wasn't very apparent, kind of a very faint signature. You said you'd seen that in the past. Is that kind of common in the plains there, or we don't, down here in Florida, I don't think we've really seen that down here. So I was just kind of wondering about that.
I know we were going to look into this, and then the West not being around anymore. So we've only had one other case of this,
Right.
And it was another one that was relatively close to the radar. So this one was definitely the closest. So if you were to roll back a few slides, I don't know if you can reshare, but our radar was just on the other side of Wichita. So I mean, we're not talking very far. And then I know I read or looked at one case, I think from Vivek down in Norman. They had a case of it too. And I mean, his ones, I think it was like looking at kind of piece it together on the correlation coefficient. But it's really tough. And, we haven't found a very specific environmental reason, of why we're not seeing it. Yeah, if you go forward one, back to the map there. There you go. So basically, if the far bottom left image of that is pretty close to where the radar is located. That little like gray rectangle on the edge. Yeah, just left of your cursor and up a little bit more. Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah, so that little gray box area, that's where we are. Like, that's the airport. We're just on the other side of the airport. So, I mean, we're not talking about very far. Like, our beam's pretty low. I mean, it's low as it's going to get. Yeah, the only thing I can think of would be, because it was so high based, and, the moisture being lower, I guess. But yeah, it's tough. We haven't quite figured out why around that.
All right. Well, thank you. I think I'll pass it back to Jordan here.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Matthew. That was great. And thanks to everybody for those questions.
Oh, I just have one question, please.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, Kelly. So when you were saying that at a time you were getting reports that it was on the ground, not on the ground, I mean, how do you determine which to believe? Do you sometimes might like start asking them for pictures or videos to rely on that heavily, or how would you go about that?
Yeah, so in that particular case, those were calls that were going into the EOC, the emergency management. So we weren't receiving that on our end at the office at the time. However, you know, you've got your spotters that you trust, and you'll bank your money on them, right? And so that was some of the reason we even pulled the trigger, is we were getting those reports from really, really reliable people. But you know, when you do get those, even those images, you'd agree, right? You know, up until the point that you have a debris ball on the radar, you know, it really depended on what your horizon was, and the fact that you had a section at the start that it wasn't filled in. So yeah, you can have debris down here, but if you can't see down here and you can only see the funnel part, you know, to you it really is just a funnel, and there really is no tornado. So it's definitely hard. And you know, being at the office, there's only going to be probably one right at this moment. So some of that, you know, you can maybe triangulate some of that. But yeah, perspective was a huge thing.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for that last minute question. And again, thank you, Kelly, for that great synopsis of this event. So many different ways that hazards reveal themselves in our observations. All right. Well, we're going to turn the page to next Thursday, or actually it's 2 Thursdays from now. July 11th, we'll be skipping the Independence Day holiday. On July 11th, though, we'll have Eric Bruning from Texas Tech and others to discuss the GLM background imagery and data quality. So Joseph Patton and Kevin Thiel will be with us then as well. In the meantime, please do not hesitate to contact the Tower S team if you have any questions about the Satellite Book Club, or you're wondering about some of the satellite products we're talking about in the book club. Our Tower S team is available. We've got Kashad, Emily here. They're always happy to help and always standing by. You can find us on the Slack channel as well, Tower-S. With that, once again, I say go goes you. Hope everybody has a restful Independence Day holiday when you get that time off. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.